Would like to welcome our first reciter of the evening, Brother Ahmad Elias, who is a 25-year-old final year medical student, and he's a professional reciter from Afghanistan, and he lives in Germany. He is an excellent reciter, and you will all see it from his recitation, inshallah. He'll be reciting from Surah Al-Furqan, and I will share the slides now.
Okay, assalamu alaikum. Can I start?
Go ahead.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وتوكل على الحي الذي لا يموت وسبح بحمده وكفى به بذنوب عباده خبيرا. وتوكل على الحي الذي لا يموت وسبح بحمده وكفى به بذنوب عباده خبيرا. الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وما بينهما في 6 أيام الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وما بينهما في 6 أيام ثم استوى على العرش. الرحمن فاسأل به خبيرا. وإذا قيل لهم اسجدوا للرحمن قالوا وما الرحمن أنسجد لما تأمرنا وزادهم نفورا. تبارك الذي جعل قمرا منيرا وهو الذي جعل الليل والنهار خلفة لمن أراد أن يذكر أو أراد شكورا وعباد الرحمن الذين يمشون على الأرض هونا وإذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا سلاما والذين يبيتون لربهم سجدا وقياما والذين يقولون ربنا اصرف عنا عذاب جهنم إن عذابها كان غراما إنها مستقرا ومقاما والذين يقولون ربنا اصرف عنا عذاب جهنم إن عذابها كان غراما والذين يقولون ربنا اصرف عنا عذاب جهنم إن عذابها كان غراما إنها ساءت مستقرا ومقاما والذين إذا أنفقوا لم يسرفوا ولم يقتروا وكان بين ذلك قواما والذين لا يدعون مع الله إلها آخر ولا يقتلون النفس التي حرم الله إلا بالحق ولا يزنون. والذين لا يدعون مع الله إلها آخر ولا يقتلون النفس التي حرم الله إلا بالحق ولا ومن يفعل ذلك يلقى أثاما يضاعف له العذاب يوم القيامة ويخلد فيه مهانا إلا من تاب وآمن وعمل عملا صالحا فأولئك يبدل الله سيئاتهم حسنات وكان الله غفورا رحيما. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
الله أحسنت طيب الله.
شكرا.
Thank you, Brother Ahmad, for that beautiful recitation. So we would now like to welcome our second reciter for the evening, Brother Qari Salehi, with over 25 years of experience in tajweed and recitation, as well as being a judge in many Quran competitions.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam. Inshallah, Brother Salehi will be reading from Surah An-Nur and Surah Al-Balad. Again, a very, very experienced reciter, and I don't need to say anymore. Inshallah, you'll see his beautiful recitation.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Just to let you know, brothers and sisters, that I just recovered from the COVID about 2 weeks, so probably I'm not very, very good at the moment. So, but inshallah, just contributing to your program, and I'm very absolutely honored to be in your program, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله السماوات والأرض مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في زجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية الله نور السماوات والأرض مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في زجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم. في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال. في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال.
الله.
رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله. رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة يخافون يوما تتقلب فيه القلوب والأبصار. رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة يخافون يوما تتقلب فيه القلوب والأبصار.
الله الله، أحسنت ما شاء الله.
ليجزيهم الله أحسن ما عملوا ويزيدهم من فضله والله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا أقسم بهذا البلد وأنت حل بهذا البلد ووالد وما ولد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا أقسم بهذا البلد وأنت حل بهذا البلد ووالد وما ولد. لقد خلقنا الإنسان في كبد. أيحسب أن لم يره أيحسب أن لن يقدر عليه أحد يقول أهلكت مالا لبدا أيحسب أن لم يره أحد ألم نجعل له عينين ولسانا وشفتين وهديناه النجدين. ألم نجعل له عينين ولسانا وشفتين وهديناه النجدين. النجدين فلاقتحم العقبة وما أدراك ما العقبة فك رقبة أو إطعام في يوم ذي مسغبة يتيما ذا مقربة أو مسكينا ذا متربة ثم كان من الذين آمنوا وتواصوا بالصبر وتواصوا بالمرحمة أولئك أصحاب الميمنة ثم كان من الذين آمنوا وتواصوا بالصبر وتواصوا بالمرحمة أولئك أصحاب الميمنة صدق الله العلي العظيم.
أحسنتم.
Ahsantum, Sheikh. Thank you very much for that beautiful recitation, very powerful indeed. And despite, as you said, having COVID, it still was an amazing recitation. Now we will move on to the next part of the program, which inshallah is the lecture. So
Okay, so we would like to welcome our esteemed speaker, Sister Nazmina Dhanji. She's the founder of Arabic Online, and she's a busy multitasker mother of 4 kids. She's also a polyglot who speaks 7 languages, and she is also the author of 50 Quranic comforts for moms and published translator of many works from Arabic to English. She's been heading the Department of Arabic Studies at Al-Mahdi Institute in Birmingham for several years, developing curricula in Arabic language and grammar. She's also a fellow in the Chartered Institute Linguists. Her mission is to help people connect to the Quran on a deeper level through the beautiful language. Can we please welcome her?
Assalamu alaikum, Sister Nazmina. Thank you very much for
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thank you for having me. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam said, if everyone from the east to the west were to die, I would not feel lonely if I had the Quran with me. And this is what I would like to reflect on today, as the topic of our talk is isolation and lessons from the Quran. Now, from when the world went into this kind of isolation or quarantine or lockdown, even those who had no idea about this hadith of our Imam managed to make and spread memes saying quarantine equals Quran time, right? We've all seen those memes. So it's not a new phenomenon that the Quran is a source of solace and comfort in times of loneliness. But there's actual truth to this, as the Quran recounts to us stories of every kind that we can draw lessons from. And the Quran invites us quite emphatically to ponder on its verses and to spend time with it. So reflecting on the theme of isolation, there are many, many examples in the Quran of prophets and prophetic personalities that seek out uzla. So uzla is what's known as solitude or retreat in Arabic. And these prophetic personalities, they make the best of solitary confinement. So today I'd like to just draw your attention to these stories, or some of them, as we now potentially come out of social distancing or isolation. And we'd like to reflect on what can we take away from the Quranic concept of isolation or solitude. And from examining these stories, we're going to find that there are prophets and saintly personalities who found themselves in isolation due to circumstances beyond their control, and then those who actually sought isolation or solitude, either by divine inspiration or by themselves. So you'll get an array of stories looking at them. So I'm just going to share my screen so you can see the slides for now. And hopefully, if you can let me know when you see the screen. Oops.
Yeah, we can see it.
I'm just gonna. You see the whole slide?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So firstly, we've got the story of Nabi Yunus, where he finds himself in the belly of the fish by circumstance, not by choice. And what he does. So the Quran says, وَذَنُّونِ إِذْ ذَهَبَ مُغَاضِبًا فَظَنَّ أَن لَّن نَّقْدِرَ عَلَيْهِ فَنَادَى فِي الظُّلُمَاتِ أَن لَّا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ سُبْحَانَكَ إِنِّي كُنتُ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. So we know the story of it, but what he does when he finds himself in that dhulumat, in the darkness, in that lonely place where death is imminent, what he does is not ask for a way out or say, Lord, get me out of here, or feel sorry for himself. He actually introspects, he goes within himself and he beseeches Allah and he admits his shortcomings. So he doesn't actually say, take me out of this. He just says, there's no God but you, you're immaculate. I have indeed been among the wrongdoers, which is very interesting in his kind of his reaction to that state of isolation and loneliness and darkness. We also find the story of Sayyida Hajar, where Nabi Ibrahim takes her to this barren valley. Now, clearly there are no people around, because that's the whole point of Prophet Ibrahim's dua that he makes here. He says, رَبَّنَا إِنِّي أَسْكَنْتُ مِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي بِوَادٍ غَيْرِ ذِي زَرْعٍ. So I've left my family in this valley which has no vegetation whatsoever. عند بيتك المحرم ربنا ليقيموا الصلاة, so that they may establish prayer. And then this is his prayer, فَجْعَلْ أَفْئِدَةً مِنَ النَّاسِ تَهْوِي إِلَيْهِمْ. So make the hearts of people fond of them or inclined towards them, and provide them with fruit so that they may give thanks. So again, there are no people around, but she, instead of feeling sorry for herself or wait for a miracle from the sky, or just sit there and think, well, I'm the wife of a prophet, or anything like that, she makes the best of her situation to survive above everything, right? And we know that she runs between Mount Safa and Mount Marwa to fetch water for her baby. But she gets on with it in that time and in that period of extreme loneliness and solitude. But she finds herself there by circumstance, not by choice. And then we've got the story of Prophet Ayub. So his wife and children deserted him. And again, by circumstance, due to his illness that he was being tested with. So again, Prophet Ayub is literally quarantined and isolated from society. And he calls out to Allah in dua again. And he says, Inni massani ash-shaytanu bin-nusbin wa adhab. So the devil has visited me, on me hardship and torment. And Allah restores his health and brings back his family to him, adding even more children. So his situation at the end is even better than it was before his test. But again, it was through his isolation was through circumstances beyond his control. And then we've got other stories of people who perhaps chose that period of isolation. So we've got Ashabul Kahf, and the language that the Quran uses is وَإِذِ اعْتَزَلْتُمُوهُمْ, when you disassociated yourselves from them, meaning from the people, وَمَا يَعْبُدُونَ إِلَى اللَّهِ, and what they worshipped besides Allah, فَأْوُوا إِلَى الْكَهْفِ, so take refuge in the cave. So in one sense, they took refuge in the cave to protect their lives, and in another sense, they disassociated themselves out of choice in protection of their faith. So there's an element of escaping from danger to save their lives, but also a willful disassociation from their society to protect their faith. So there's a bit of both there. Then we've got the example of Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, where he actually chooses imprisonment. He chooses solitary confinement over the threat of sins and temptations. So he says here, قال ربي السجن أحب إلي مما يدعونني إليه. The prison is dearer to me than what they're inviting me towards. And if you do not turn away their schemes from me, I will incline towards them and become one of the senseless. So what he does in the prison is he makes the most of his time in there to make friends with his fellow inmates, gain their trust, teach them about the one God when the time is right, interpret their dreams, and kind of makes the best of that situation, supplicating and increasing in confidence to then take over and become, get himself in a position of leadership. When we look at Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, again, we see that same word, i'tazala, from the word uzla, which is solitude. فَلَمَّا اعْتَزَلَهُمْ وَمَا يَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. So when he left them, so he actually chooses to leave his home and his people because they were idolaters who just refused to believe. And when he does that, he distances himself. Allah calls him an ummah. He says, Inna Ibrahim kana ummatan qanitan lillah. So by himself, he is an ummah. Because of his resolve and steadfastness, he doesn't really need anybody else. But Allah grants him children thereafter and strengthens him with many other things. And obviously gives him progenies of all the monotheistic religions after him. Then we've got Nabi Musa alayhi salam also went through a period of solitude and retreat. So the Quran says, وَوَعَدْنَا مُوسَى 30 لَيْلَةً وَأَتْمَمْنَاهَا بِعَشْرٍ. We made an appointment with Musa for 30 nights, and then we added on 10 more, completed them with 10 more. فَتَمَّ مِيقَاتُ رَبِّهِ 40 لَيْلَةً. So the tryst or the appointment with his Lord was completed in 40 nights. So he retreats, and this was pre-planned. It was by command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But even for those 30 nights, that month, he appoints Harun to lead his people in his absence. But at the end of those 40 days, he receives revelation by way of the tablets, and he goes back with renewed vigor to lead his people with an actual sharia, with a law. Then we've got the example of Sayyidah Maryam. She, again, now this time the language uses intabadat. She withdrew from her family. واذكر في الكتاب مريم إذ انتبذت من أهلها مكانا شرقيا. So mention in the book Maryam when she withdrew from her family to an easterly place. And again, فحملته فانتبذت به مكانا قصيا. Then she conceived him and withdrew with him to a distant place. So Sayyidah Maryam again chooses to distance herself from her family when she realizes that she's expecting. And it's actually the opposite to what women instinctively do. They need support, they need help, they need other females around them. But she actually seeks out seclusion and solitude. And it could be so as not to bring shame on her people, or out of her virtue and divine inspiration. So again, that's another example of her actually seeking out solitude. And there's also the example, which is not mentioned in the Quran, but which we have from the biblical tradition of Prophet Isa, wandering in the wilderness for 40 days. And lastly, of course, the example of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who we know retreated in the cave of Hira for several days at a time before revelation came to him, and also while revelation was coming down and he had to announce, and before the bi'tha. And as revelation was coming down in those early days, Allah actually commands him to devote himself exclusively. He says, "Inna laka fin nahari sabhan tawila." Indeed, during the day you have long drawn out engagements, right? He was busy. And he says, وَاذْكُرِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ وَتَبَتَّلْ إِلَيْهِ تَبْتِيلًا. So the word here he used is tabattal. So we've had i'tazala, which is to kind of isolate yourself, intabada, which is to withdraw yourself, and tabattala, which is to dedicate exclusively, like exclusive devotion to Allah. So he had to do that. Sometimes he'd go to the cave, sometimes it was in his own home in the middle of the night, but it was a period of isolation and retreat. And also we have the example of the Muslims when they were, the early Muslims when they were banished and, if you like, quarantined to Shi'b Abi Talib for 3 years when the Muslims were besieged. So there's lots and lots of examples that we have of isolation in the Quran. You just end this and stop sharing for a second. Let me know when you can see me again. Oops. Has it stopped sharing?
Yeah, we can see you now.
You can see me? Okay, great. Sorry about this. Just lost where I was. Okay. So from examining these stories now, we saw that there were those who didn't choose isolation, but they embraced it when they found themselves in it, right? We saw the example of Prophet Yunus, who doesn't ask to be removed from it. He simply confesses his own inner darkness and embraces it. We saw how Hajar does her best with her circumstances, but all of their stories, regardless of whether they chose it or not, end with mercy, forgiveness, revelation, leadership, strength, and renewed vigor. And it's a lot to do with the result of what they did in that time and space. So in the Quran, it seems that solitude and isolation are seen as opportune times of communion with Allah, of increased worship, of supplication, dedication, renewed effort. And that should lead us to reflect on these things. And I'd like you to reflect yourselves on, you know, these beautiful stories that we have. But I came up with four reflections of my own, which I'd like to share with you. So firstly, Islam teaches us that we are social creatures, right? By instinct, we know that we're social creatures, and periods of isolation are temporary measures. We actually have a hadith discouraging people from willfully isolating themselves away from society for long periods of time. And that's why you have things like Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam's dua for his family, where he says, فَجْعَلْ أَفْئِدَةً مِّنَ النَّاسِ تَهْوِي إِلَيْهِمْ. Let people's hearts incline towards them. So Hajar and Ismail being there wasn't supposed to be a long-term thing, right? They're supposed to attract people towards them. And we have a hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam who said, the believer who mingles with people and tolerates their wrongs is better than the believer who does not mingle with people or tolerate their wrongs. So we are encouraged to be in society, and isolation is a temporary measure. And we've all experienced that, right? We're craving to meet up with people again. Now, although we have found ourselves in lockdown or isolation by circumstance, certainly not choice, hopefully we've embraced the opportunity and made the most of recharging, increasing our worship and closeness to Allah, re-evaluating our goals. Just like, Prophet Yusuf came out stronger in the way he talked and presented himself. Prophet Musa was strengthened by it. Our Prophet found it necessary to give weight to his gait even. But it's really important to take heed and take note that physical uzla, right now we're in a state of physical uzla, doesn't mean we've actually attained that state of uzla or solitude if we've immersed ourselves in just another world. Like we may have immersed ourselves in the online world, which is maybe even more stimulating than our outside life, right? Our outside life could be quite boring, and the online world could be very stimulating, and we could actually be busier than ever before, right? We could be attending loads of programs, or even if they're beneficial, and lots of online courses, but have we actually made ourselves busier than ever, or have we given ourselves space for uzla in all senses, not just physically? So that's something to think about. Thirdly, there is a lot of merit to enter into regular periods of self-isolation by choice. And it doesn't have to be something, formally inspired by Allah or anything like that. And we've got to think that once we come out of this, is uzla something that we will choose for ourselves regularly? And what would that look like? Will it look like maybe a social media fast, 3 days at the end of each month to just kind of recalibrate, take a time out, that might be an idea. Is it going to look like purposeful retreats away every so often? Have we learned to actually go inwards and perhaps have nothing with us except the Quran, like Imam Zainul Abidin suggested? So it's important that as we, inshallah, come out of this period of lockdown, that we think about the benefits of it, in that will we willfully enter into it again for our own benefit. And ultimately, and lastly, it's important before we come out of it to take this as an opportunity and embrace it, if we haven't already done so, to reconnect with ourselves, maybe reconnect with our spouses, our children, learn new skills, recommit to our faith, but do the opposite of what the masses are doing, right? If the masses are binging on Netflix, will the outcome be the same? Is the outcome of everybody's lockdown the same, right? So there's still time to reflect and engage in more worship, engage in seeking forgiveness, making the most of our time, and inshallah making the most of another Shahr Ramadan in this period of semi-lockdown. So I leave you with these reflections, and inshallah you'll share some of your own if time permits. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam. Thank you very much, sister, for that beautiful and interesting talk, and how you highlighted to us how the different holy figures in the Holy Quran have been through periods of isolation, by choice or not by choice, and how they've used those opportunities and to reflect. So now I'd like to ask any of the attendees if they have any questions for our speaker today. Feel free to ask in the chat or unmute, show your camera and ask directly.
I really liked the way you taught. I really like translation in the space, and I was wondering if you did more classes online.
Jazakallah, thank you. So at the moment, all my efforts are focused on Arabic Online, what you can see behind me. If you just type that in www.arabic.online, you'll see I run Arabic classes, so and specifically Quranic Arabic. So that's where you can find me. And I've been teaching at Al-Mahdi Institute, so they still have some of my courses running at the moment. So there's a course on Ulum al-Quran, which is sciences of the Quran, and Ulum al-Hadith, which I believe are still running there.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
You can feel free to share your own reflections, even if it's not questions, but you can or anything else you gain from those ayat, or something I've forgotten to mention.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Just a question, not directly related to your talk today, but seeing as we're in the holy months leading up to Ramadan, and Ramadan is around the corner, how do you suggest we go about in our own time connecting better with the Quran?
Connecting with verses of the Quran.
Yes.
I would highly, personally, the way I would approach it would be to either choose a theme to explore in the Quran, or a particular surah that you can focus on. And alhamdulillah, I mean, we're blessed to be living at a time when there's a plethora of Quranic lectures online. Literally everybody's got some kind of Quranic series or tafsir series. And I think it's helpful to concentrate your efforts in one direction rather than kind of be all over the place. So maybe you find a series on a certain prophet or a certain akhlaqi theme, or whatever it is you feel you could benefit from most. So I personally find that helps a lot. Some people like to focus on improving their tajweed, for example, in that month, or improving their fluency, or whatever the case may be. But I think having a focus is more important than trying to do everything all together. So that's what I would recommend. And if you are reading the Quran as a whole, I would highly, highly recommend the study Quran done by Sayyid Hussein Nasr while you're reading. Now, the only unfortunate thing with this is that it doesn't have the Arabic. So it's got the English translation and it's got commentary, and a commentary taken from various different sources and summarized. But if you don't have time to read into tafasir and read extensively, but you'd still like to complete the Quran, that's a good one to go through. So whilst you're reading the Arabic, or say you've read the Arabic for that day, then to read the English and the commentary, it's doable.
Thank
I
you.
hope that helps, inshallah.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody's asked if you could share the link to the book.
Yeah, sure. So it's available on Amazon. It's just called if you type in the study Quran, it's bound to come up. And just type in Nasr, Nasr, and you'll find it. Yeah, thank you. Someone's done it.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions for the speaker before we move on?
I just had one question. Assalamu alaikum. How do we manage the moments during the pandemic when we don't feel the most productive, and when we don't feel like we there's times when people feel down, or they feel guilty, they haven't done that much that day, and whether it's be studying, or whether it be connecting to Allah through reading the Quran or Hadith, what advice would you give for those situations?
See, Imam alayhi salam actually acknowledged that we would go through periods of feeling on a high and feeling really motivated to do things, and that by nature our soul also has done low periods when we don't feel like doing anything, or you're ridden with guilt, you should be doing something but you don't. So the way they addressed it is that they advise their followers, or their companions rather, to sort of ride the wave when you feel that encouragement and that motivation, and do as much as you can, and go with it and strengthen yourselves. And when you're going through a low period, even if you can only manage the bare minimum, then you do the bare minimum. So you adhere to the wajibat at all costs. Those are non-negotiable, right? So your wajibat, your salah, your, the bare minimum that you can do, you do, but with a view to being better. So never kind of become so complacent or justify where you are and tell yourself, you know what, it's okay, or I am where I am, or I'm doing me, kind of thing, right? So always have a view to where your goal is or what you would like to do, whilst acknowledging that you are where you are. You need to be at a low to be able to experience a high. So that's what they would advise, that it's inevitable, you're going to go through peaks and troughs, but have your eyes higher than just kind of wallowing in that and becoming too comfortable in a low state.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we will move on to the final recitation of the evening. And this recitation is from Qari Muhammad Yusuf ElBedr, who is an international Quran reciter and teacher. He's the founder of the ElBedr Quran Institute, which is an international Quranic institute. He memorized the Quran completely here in England and continued studying in Egypt, the sciences of recitation and Quranic sciences. And he completed memorization in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. He travels across the globe as a professional Quran reciter, as well as an official judge. He is, of course, a very experienced and talented individual. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to you. Thank you, Brother Musa, for the kind invitation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your efforts, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you and grant all of us the tawfiq to do more and more, inshallah.
I mean, likewise with you. Thank you very much. And everybody who has attended. Would you like to say anything before you begin your recitation?
Firstly, I'm very pleased to be joining all of you tonight. And once again, thank you very much. And very pleased to be with my dear friend, Qari Ahmad Elias, all the way from Germany. A very good friend of mine, and we've known each other for many years now. Probably, I don't know, 7, 8 years, maybe more, And we've met, and we've, in fact, where was it? We were together in Iran, and we had, mashallah, it was a very good time in a Quran recitation trip. And yes, so I'm very pleased to be here with all of you.
Thank you, and we are very pleased to have you both recite for us. Okay, so Sheikh Yusuf will inshallah be reciting from Surah Al-Isra. So فضيلة الشيخ المقرئ الأستاذ محمد يوسف البدر حفظه الله يتلو علينا ما تيسر له من آيات الله البينات من سورة الإسراء، فليتفضل مشكورا.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن هذا القرآن يهدي للتي هي أقوم يهدي للتي هي أقوم ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا كبيرا.
الله الله.
وأن الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة أعتدنا لهم عذابا أليما.
الله.
ويدعو الإنسان بالشر دعاءه بالخير وكان الإنسان عجولا.
الله
الله الله.
إن هذا القرآن يهدي للتي هي أقوم ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا كبيرا.
الله.
وأن الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة أعتدنا لهم عذابا أليما.
الله.
ويدع الإنسان بالشر دعاءه بالخير ويدع الإنسان بالشر دعاءه بالخير وكان الإنسان عجولا.
الله الله. أحسنت.
ويدع الإنسان بالشر دعاءه بالخير وكان الإنسان عجولا. ويدع الإنسان بالشر دعاءه بالخير وكان الإنسان وجعلنا الليل والنهار آيتين وجعلنا الليل والنهار آيتين وجعلنا الليل والنهار آيتين فمحونا آية الليل وجعلنا آية النهار مبصرة لتبتغوا فضلا من ربكم ولتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب وكل شيء فصلناه تفصيلا
الله
الله.
وكل إنسان ألزمناه طائره في عنقه وكل إنسان ألزمناه طائره في عنقه ونخرج له يوم القيامة كتابا ونخرج له يوم القيامة كتابا يلقاه منشورا ونخرج له يوم القيامة كتابا يلقاه منشورا اقرأ كتابك
الله
جميل. الله الله.
جميل ما شاء الله.
وكل إنسان ألزمناه طائره في عنقه ونخرج له يوم القيامة كتابا يلقاه منشورا اقرأ كتابك كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا
الله. أحسنت.
جميل جميل.
وكل إنسان ألزمناه طائره في عنقه وكل إنسان ألزمناه طائره في عنقه ونخرج له يوم القيامة كتابا يلقاه منشورا.
الله جميل.
اقرأ كتابك اقرأ كتابك كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا.
الله يفتح عليك.
وكل إنسان ألزمناه طائره في عنقه ونخرج له يوم القيامة كتابا يلقاه منشورا. اقرأ كتابك.
الله
أحسنت
أحسنت جميل يا سلام.
اقرأ كتابك اقرأ كتابك كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا. وكل إنسان ألزمناه طائره في عنقه ونخرج له يوم القيامة كتابا يلقاه منشورا. اقرأ كتابك.
الله
جميل.
ونخرج له يوم القيامة كتابا يلقاه منشورا. اقرأ كتابك كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا.
أحسنت.
من اهتدى فإنما يهتدي لنفسه ومن ضل فإنما يضل عليها. من اهتدى فإنما يهتدي لنفسه ومن ضل فإنما يضل عليها. ومن ضل فإنما يضل عليها تزر وازرة وزر أخرى وما كنا معذبين حتى نبعث رسولا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى. بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى. قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى. بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى.
الله
قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى. بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى.
الله
إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. قد أفلح من تزكى قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى. بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى. إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. صدق الله العظيم.
أحسنت ما شاء الله.
ما شاء الله تبارك الله.
تفضل أعمالك.
جميل
ما شاء الله.
الله يرفع عليك.